All right, guys. The name of this sermon is going to be called Eye for an Eye, Tooth for a Tooth. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. There may be some of you listening thinking, okay, I already know what this sermon is going to be about. It's going to be about seeking vengeance on somebody because they did you wrong, or it's going to be about punishment, making sure someone gets their due punishment for what they did wrong. But that's not what it's about, even though it sounds like that's what it's going to be about because of the name of the sermon. But that's not it. In fact, you'll understand later in this sermon why it's called Eye for an Eye, Tooth for a Tooth. But really, this sermon is about the subject of faith. Now, I'm going to be talking about faith from a different perspective from what most are used to hearing it about in a lot of sermons. Usually, when we hear about faith in a lot of sermons, the person's talking about faith without works is dead, right? We know that verse from James chapter 2, faith without works is dead. And basically, what it's being, or what they're saying, what they're trying to convey is, it's good to have faith in something. It's good to believe for something, but it's still important to put works or actions behind your faith. Yeah, have faith. Know that at the end of the day, God is the one that's going to bring it all together for you, but it's still important to not just sit on it, but to actually put in some effort into what it is that you're believing for. So faith without works backing it up is dead. That's basically the point that they're trying to make. However, in this sermon, I want to look at it from the other perspective, the opposite perspective. And what I mean by that is this. Sometimes the problem is not that you've got faith but you don't have works backing it up. Sometimes the problem is that you've got works, actions, but you don't have faith fueling it. Let me say that again. Sometimes the problem is not so much that you have faith, but you don't have the works or the actions backing it up. Sometimes you've got all the works, all the actions, you're doing so much stuff, but you don't truly fully believe in the very things that you're working for. And so now, since you don't have the faith to fuel your actions, it's as if your works are dead. They're pointless simply because you don't believe, which should be the easier part. But sometimes the believing is the hardest part. Some people, they can do so much stuff and work circles around people and nothing's a big deal. They don't struggle with, being a busybody all the time. But even after doing all this stuff, they still don't believe in or believe for their cause or their purpose. All this energy and effort into all these things that they're doing, yet getting nowhere simply because they lack faith. And it'll be the only thing that they're lacking. So that's what we're going to get into with this message. So to help you understand a little bit more as we get ready to get into scripture, and those that are following along, I'm going to start out in 2 Kings. But let me just break this down more to help you understand. When people say faith without works is dead, usually they'll go on to give examples kind of like this. They'll say things like, okay, it's good that you're believing God for a job, but are you putting yourself out there? Are you applying for jobs? Are you putting in applications? Da 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 da. Then they'll say, okay, it's good that you have a job and you want a promotion on the job you already have, but what are you doing? Yeah, you have faith and you're praying that God would open up somebody's eyes that's on a higher level than you at the workplace, that might notice how good you work and give you a promotion. But are you really going above and beyond what's required of you to show that you deserve that promotion? What actions, extra actions and efforts are you putting into it? So they may give an example like that, or they'll say, okay, it's good, that you want this, this vehicle or this really cool motorcycle or whatever. That's cool, and that's pretty awesome that you've got faith in God that he can, make that happen, that you can get this limited edition blah blah blah. But are you saving up the money so that when God presents you with the opportunity to purchase that vehicle, or at least put a down payment on it, do you have some things saved up so that you'll be able to do it when the time comes? Or are you just going to have to pass it up because you weren't prepared for the blessing? So there's another example. They may say, oh, well, you've got this little apartment, you want a nice big house in your name. That's cool. But are you taking care of what you already have now? Because if you're not taking care of what you already have, why would you believe God for more? Right? So those are some examples of things that people would say when they're saying faith without works is dead. It's good that you believe, but what actions are you using behind it? But in this sermon, as I've said, it's more about the opposite of that. Doing the works and the actions, but not having the faith. So, for example, you may be wanting that promotion on the job. You may be working your behind off. You may be, somebody calls in. You may say, oh, let me take their hours, or, oh, I'll stay over extra and help, and da-da-da-da-da. You do all these things, go above and beyond. But in your mind, you keep thinking, oh, well, I'm never gonna move up. I'm never gonna get that promotion. I'm never gonna blah, blah, blah. No one ever, acknowledges what I do, and blah, blah, blah. So you're just a Debbie Downer about the whole thing. You're full of doubt. So you're putting in all the work, the effort, but your lack of faith may hold you back. Maybe you're the type of person that, you want a kid, and maybe you struggled to have a kid for years. And maybe you've even put in the extra effort. Maybe you went and, got a different house and that had the extra bedroom. And so now you've got this bedroom set up for the kid, and you got the crib, and you got the pink or the baby blue blanket, depending on, the gender the kid might be. And then you got the designs up, all around the room, the Disney themed curtains, Lion King, or, got your Super Mario stuff hanging up or whatever. You got it all ready for the kid that you don't believe you're going to have. So you put in the work, you put in the effort, you got the room set up, and you bought the baby clothes and the diapers, but deep in your heart, you just keep saying, man, I just, I haven't had a kid in all these years. I just don't think that God is going to just let me have this one thing that I want so bad. Right? See where I'm going with this? So you put in the work, but because of the lack of faith and being so sure already in your heart that God won't answer you, you shut it down. You just shut it down with a lack of faith. So let's just get into this. So starting out here in 2 Kings, and let's see, we will be in chapter 4, starting at verse 8. It says this: And it fell on the day that Elisha passed the Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold, I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call the Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him, and he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. So let me just stop there before I finish this verse. What's going on here is this. You have this woman, this Shunammite woman, and you have Elisha, this prophet, this man of God, and his servant Gehazi. And whenever Elisha is traveling through in this particular city, in this particular area, this woman, this Shunammite woman, invites him and his servant into her home. Matter of fact, the Bible lets us know that she had a specific designated area in her home set up just for him. And so she even says to her husband, this is a holy man. Let's help him out. Let's take care of him. So she invites him into her home to be able to sit down, to relax. She's willing to show him hospitality because she sees that this is a man of God. And so she does this for so long, and it gets to a point where Elisha, the prophet, he says, you know what? I want to see this woman blessed. She's been good to me. She hasn't asked for anything, just out of the kindness of her heart, been good to me simply because she knows I'm a man of God. And I respect it. I want to honor that. And so I want to see her blessed. So he's talking to his servant Gehazi, trying to figure out what he could say or what he could prophesy, speak over her life. And so he is trying to figure out what she may want, and when talking to this woman, she's basically just saying, I'm good. But he talks to his servant and asks what he thinks, and Gehazi's like, well, this couple, they're on up in age and they still haven't had a child, so that might be the thing this woman wants. And so Elisha's like, okay. So he starts talking to the Shunammite woman, and he speaks over her life and says, during this season, during a particular set time, you are going to birth a child. You're going to have a child. And you would think this woman would be excited to hear that. You would think this woman would be just so happy to have this prophesied over her life. But look at what she says halfway through verse 16. It says, and she said, Nay, or no, my Lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. So she says, don't say that. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me that lie. Why would she say something like that? Why would she say to this guy, don't say I'm going to have a kid. Don't lie to me. Why would she all of a sudden now want to believe that he's some liar? Because prior to this, she was going on and on and on to her husband about how Elisha was this man of God. He's this holy man. Let's be good to him. So she knows the truth. She knows that he's not a liar. She knows that he is genuine. He's not a false prophet. She knows that he's the real deal. She knows he's a man of God. Why would she now say this? It's not that she really necessarily is believing that he's some liar now. Simply put, she is lacking faith. This is an area of her life where she has lacked faith. And the interesting thing about it is she's done the works. Right? She's gone out of her way to set up the bed and the stool and the table and the designated area, and she's always welcoming him into the home and taking care of him, showing him hospitality while he's there. She's put in the action. She's put in the efforts to be blessed by consistently taking in and taking care of this man of God. But when he prophesies an outstanding word over her, instead of receiving this word and being jubilant about this word, instead, she's in a state of denial simply because of the fear and the doubt and the faithlessness that she has. And maybe since they're this couple, this woman and her husband, they're on up in age, maybe that's what it is. Maybe she's believed for a kid for so many years, and since it hasn't happened, she's decided to not even believe for it anymore. And so now that this man is saying it's going to happen, maybe she has decided in her heart, you know what, I've believed for this so many times that now I don't want to get my hopes up anymore. I don't want to start to believe for something that I've been believing for so long, just for it to continue to not happen, or possibly not happen, even if you do prophesy it over me. I would rather not get all excited and be on the edge of my seat waiting for something, and then once again it's still not happen. So I'd rather just say, oh no, it's a lie. Don't say it anymore. Just let me be. That was basically the way she was thinking here. Matter of fact, I read that out of the King James Version, but I like to look at other translations as well just to see what it may say. And in the Compass Bible translation, I love how they put it. It says this. It says that she said, "That's impossible, my Lord. You are a man of great integrity, a man of God, so please do not deceive me, your servant." It's almost like she's saying, you're better than that. You're better than this lie that you're telling me. So, man of God, don't say that. Don't say something that I know is not going to happen and ruin or tarnish your integrity, your character. Don't blemish your name and tell a lie just to try to make me feel better. You're better than this lie that you're telling me. Wow. Wow, that's pretty crazy, but that's the mindset that she's going into this with. She's saying, I'd rather you just not say this and not, take a gamble on this not happening than to come into agreement with me on it and then it not play out. So let's keep going. Verse 17, it says, "And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, then died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband, and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God, and come again. So now, this is what is played out. Now, she's gotten to a point where she's had the kid, the same one that the man of God said she would, but the child is at a point where he has died, and she has decided to not give up. Now, this is awesome that she has faith now. It'd have been even more awesome if she had the faith back then when she was first told that she was going to have this child. But now she has decided, okay, it's like she's saying, all right, now that I've had the kid, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to lose faith now and just let him stay dead. I'm not having it. So let's keep going. Verse 23. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well. Then she saddled an ass, and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding from me, except I bid thee. So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi, his servant, behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. This right here kind of makes me think of that moment when Jacob was wrestling with God for the blessing. Remember that story? Jacob wrestling with God all night until the sun rose up. She comes up acting all cool and calm like nothing's wrong. Is all well with you, ma'am? Yeah, I'm good. Even though she's like, even though she's frantic to save her child, and she comes up and grabs this man by the feet to the point where the servant is about to, pick her up and toss her away. But the prophet's like, no, don't worry about it. She's not trying to hurt me. It's cool. She's got a lot on her heart. She was trying to hide it from me, but I see it now. Verse 28. Then she said, did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? So it's like she's saying to him, look, you said I was going to have this kid. So now that I've had this kid, I want to continue to have this kid, or else it's going to be similar to me telling you, don't deceive me. Because for me to just watch it die is just as bad as me not having it. So you said I'm going to have this kid. I want to have it. Verse 29. Then he said to Gehazi, gird up thy loins and take my staff in thine hand and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. And if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, the child is not awakened. This is what I love about this part right here. It makes me think of what happened with Lazarus. Lazarus died. Jesus comes on the scene to raise him from the dead, basically. And if you remember, everybody was saying that Lazarus was dead, but the way Jesus put it was, no, he's just asleep. He's just sleeping. And it's not that he didn't know Lazarus was dead, but it was like he didn't want to speak that over him. Because he understands we've got power in the tongue. There's power in the words we speak. He didn't want to speak death over him, so he simply said he was asleep and I'm going to go awake him. And of course, y'all know how it played out. Everybody still kept saying, no, he's dead. And finally, Jesus is just like, okay, I get it. He's dead. I'm just saying, I'm going to wake him up. But that's kind of the faith that they're clinging on to here in this story. The servant Gehazi goes and lays the staff on the child's face, and he doesn't just come to life right then, but instead of going back and saying to Elisha, hey, he's dead, he's not gonna come back to life, he just simply is like, okay, the child hasn't awakened yet. That's pretty cool. But moving on, verse 32. So we see a continuation of faith even in this situation. But verse 32, it says, and when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore and shut the door upon them twain and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child and put his mouth upon his mouth and his eyes upon his eyes and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. So now you see why I call this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Not from the perspective that we see in the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, where we see quite a few times it says eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, where it's talking about a punishment. Like, okay, somebody takes your eye out, you poke theirs out. Someone, you know what I mean? Somebody knocks your tooth out, you get to take one of theirs. It's not one of vengeance. It's not one of taking one person's life because they took someone else's. It's not about taking life. It's about giving life. Here he puts his eyes upon the child's eyes and his mouth upon his mouth, or another way to say it, his tooth upon his tooth. So eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He puts his face on the child's face, his eyes on his eyes, his mouth on his mouth, his teeth on his teeth, as if he's giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, bringing him back to life. And sure enough, it says that the child's flesh waxed warm. He's not cold with death anymore, but he's starting to slowly liven up because of this moment. So instead of, again, taking life for another, he's giving life. A whole nother spin on the perspective of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. not taking away, but giving to, bringing life to. And this ties in with a sermon that I had done over the weekend. I had did a message. It was called "What Had Happened Was," and I was talking about God giving life, breathing life into the nostrils of Adam, bringing life in dead situations. And that's similar to what we see here. The man of God bringing life into a dead situation and a dead child. And I say a dead situation because, well, we see obviously the dead child, but the dead situation more so is the child's mother, the Shunammite woman. Her lack of faith. Now he has brought life into her faith, and now he's bringing life into this child because of her faith. So let's look at what it says. It says in verse 35, "Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes." So the child is now awake. But let me just put an emphasis on this part that says that the child sneezed 7 times. 7, of course, is a significant number in the Bible. It can mean divine completion, or a divine coming together, a divine perfection. And the number 7 is associated with God a lot. So we see that this is a God moment. But what he does is he sneezes those 7 times. Now, let me say this. When we think about sneezing, we think about being sick. You caught a cold, you got the flu, blah, 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 being sick. But in this perspective, I don't think it's so much about being sick. It's more about the fact that when you sneeze, a lot of times you are getting something that's in you out of you. It's your body's way of rejecting something and forcing it out. And I'm here to say that whoever this message could be for, if this is for you, you've been someone who you've done the works, but you've lacked the faith, and now you're starting to realize that maybe right now you're going through what I'm going to call a spiritual sneezing season. A spiritual sneezing season point in your life where what's happening is this. It's like God is causing you to sneeze out all the yuck right out of you, as he's resuscitating you, as he's breathing life into you. In other words, as he's getting ready to bring in that second wind and to bring in what he has for you, what you've been believing for. In order for him to get all of what he has for you to you, and for you to be able to take it in, he has to also get all the nonsense out of you. He has to get the negativity out of you. He has to get the things that the enemy has implanted into you out of you. He's got to get your negative thoughts and mindsets out of you. He's got to get all that spiritual toxicness out of you. All of what's not of him has to get out of you. So it's being forced out of you to get what he has for you in you. And so that's what's going on here. Life is being brought into this dead child, but he begins to sneeze those 7 times, getting what's in him out of him. Maybe that's what's happening with you. Maybe you've got some things in you that need to be out. It's kind of like if you're out somewhere and you accidentally inhale some fumes, some toxic fumes, some poisonous fumes, and after you inhale it, you breathe it in so much, what happens? You start to sneeze. Your body's rejecting what you're taking in, and so that's what he's doing. He's getting the things that don't need to be in you out of you. And here's something else. Maybe it's not so much that you have a lot of bad in you. Maybe you've got something in you, or you've got a hold of something at the wrong time. Maybe the timing was off. Maybe you just weren't ready for something. And so, you got it at the wrong time, or you got it the wrong way. You received it the wrong way. And it's no similar to when you're cooking or you're around somebody cooking and they get the different seasonings and they sprinkle the seasonings, the salt and the pepper and the this and the that, all these different seasonings to give flavor to the food. And you accidentally inhale it. And when you inhale those seasonings or you smell them in so much, what happens? You start to sneeze. Now, it's not necessarily that it's bad that you took it in, but the timing was off. because you got it in you before you even started eating. So it got in you, and it got in you the wrong way because it went in your nose instead of in your mouth. So the timing was off. It went in the wrong way. It just didn't happen right. So you start to sneeze it out. But if you were just simply eating it with the food, it wouldn't have been a big deal. So maybe it's not so much of the wrong stuff. You just got a hold of something good at the wrong time or the wrong way. Does that make sense? So either way, it's got to come out though, so that you can get what it is that you need. So let me keep going. Let's keep looking. Look at this, verse 36. And he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, take up thy son. Then she went in and fell at his feet and bowed herself to the ground and took up her son and went out. So she's able to take up her son and leave, all because she finally put her faith in action. And I can't help but to wonder, if she had had this same faith when she was first told that she was going to have this child, could it be possible that the child would have never died in the first place? And maybe this was something that needed to take place to get her faith in action. Even though it was sad, oh, the child died, maybe this was what was needed to happen for her faith to finally kick in. Something to think about. Go with me to Mark chapter 9, starting at verse 20. We'll look at a story that's similar to it. We just talked about this woman wanting a child and then having this son, and the son dying and da-da-da-da-da. But let's look at this. This is a story of a man who is looking out for his son. Let's look at this. Mark 9, verse 20. And they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foaming. This man has a son, but his son, it's not that his son is dead literally. His son is possessed with a demon spirit. But if you think about it, in a way, it still ties into the story we just read about the Shunammite woman and her son, because of this. Yeah, this man's son is alive, but he's not living. Oh goodness. He's alive, but he's not living. You can be alive and not truly live. Jesus wants us to have life and life more abundant, but this guy who's possessed, he's not living the abundant life. He has no full control over his life because he's possessed. A spirit is taking him over, so he's doing things that he normally would not do. So he's alive, but he's not living. Oh goodness. So in a way, we see a little bit of a similarity on a technicality to the story of the woman with the dead son. Because this man with the son, he's alive, but he's not. But anyway, let's keep going. Verse 21. And he asked his father, how long is it ago since this came unto him? And he said, of a child. And oftentimes it cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus said unto him, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. So Jesus is calling him out on his faith. If you believe, I can do this. I can cast the spirit out of him. Verse 24. And straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. So it's like he's saying two things here. The man is saying, I believe, but Jesus, help my unbelief. He had an honest moment here. It's like he's saying, I believe, but to a certain extent. I realize I have a little bit of a lack of faith. Lord, help my unbelief. Help me. Help my unbelief. And maybe for somebody listening, this should be your prayer. You're looking for that answer. Here it is. Your prayer simply should be, Lord, help my unbelief. I've believed, but now I see I believe to a certain extent. And because I've only had limited faith, I've limited you. So Lord, help my unbelief. Because if you help my unbelief, my belief will not be limited. It will be limitless, like the limitless God that you are. Verse 25, when Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying unto him, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, He is dead. So here we are with another instance of people like, oh no, he's dead. Kind of like what they said about Lazarus. Oh no, Jesus, he's dead. Jesus has cast his spirit out of him, but because the man has fell all out, everybody's like, oh no, he's dead. It's like some people kind of had the mindset of, well, yeah, you cast the spirit out of him, but what's really the point if he's just going to be dead afterwards? But let's see what happens here. 27, it says, But Jesus took him up by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. So it ends similar to the last story I read with the Shunammite woman and her son. She was able to lift up her son, and he arose, and they went on their merry way. There's something about Jesus lifting you up. Kind of like Peter, when he got off the boat and was walking on the water towards Jesus, but all of a sudden fear crept in. His faith started to dwindle away, and he began to sink. And Jesus was willing to reach out his hand and pull him up out of water. Yeah, he said, oh, ye of little faith and all that, but he pulled him out of the water and still helped him in his time of unbelief. All he had to do was reach out in return and take his hand. And that's where you're at right now. Maybe you stepped out on faith and you got so far, but then you started to sink in whatever it is that you were believing for. And Jesus has his hand out like, just take my hand. I'll lift you up out of this. I'll help you get from point A to point B. All I need is for you to believe. With that said, there's one more book of the Bible I want to take you to, and then I'm going to wrap this up. A couple of places to look at here. 1 Thessalonians, real quick. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 17. This verse says this, pray without ceasing. That's a very commonly quoted verse. We hear that said all the time, pray without ceasing, pray without ceasing. And anytime people talk about faith or they talk about prayer, they'll mention this, pray without ceasing. In other words, pray without stopping. Whatever you have faith for, whatever you're believing for, whatever you're needing from God, pray and pray without ceasing. In other words, if you've prayed for something and it didn't happen right away, that doesn't mean give up. Just continue to pray and continue to believe. So now this last spot I want to take you to is chapter 1, still in 1 Thessalonians, but chapter 1, looking at the first 3 verses. Now, what I just read to you, of course, was written by the Apostle Paul to the people of the Thessalonian church. And so we're backing up to 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. And, of course, this is still Paul speaking. But I want you to look at what it says here. It says, Paul and Silvanus and Timotheus unto the church of the Thessalonians, which is in God the Father and in the Lord Jesus Christ, grace be unto you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. We give thanks to God always for you all, making mention of you in our prayers, remembering without ceasing your work of faith. So let me just pause there. This is the same Apostle Paul that said pray without ceasing, and he's letting us know here to remember without ceasing the work of faith. In the Amplified translation, I love how they put it. Verse 3, the start of verse 3 says, recalling unceasingly before our God and Father your work energized by faith. Works energized by faith. The same guy that said pray without ceasing, what we quote all the time, also said let our what? Our works be energized with faith without ceasing. So just like how we pray without ceasing, we have to have faith without ceasing. The faith is just as important as the prayer, is basically what I'm getting at. Both are to be done without ceasing. Matter of fact, it's pretty obvious, because how in the world are you going to pray without faith in the first place? You got to have the faith to believe for what you're praying for anyway. So the faith is just as important as the prayer. But again, going back to the fact that faith energizes the works energized by faith, let me say this. As I've said, you've got the spiritual sneezing, right? And when you sneeze a lot, when you're sick and you're trying to get all that mess out of you, what do? A lot of times you sleep more. And not only that, but you may take some medicine. And when you take medicine, the side effect is to be drowsy. So you'll sleep even the more so. So you start to get your rest, right? So now let's put this together as I wrap this up. What it comes down to is this. You go through your spiritual sneezing and you get your rest, right? You rest in the Lord. So when you rest, you now have energy to do your works. But when you have faith, the faith is what energizes the works. See what I did there? Let me say it again. As you go through your spiritual sneezing and you get your rest, right? You're drowsy, you're sleepy, you get your rest. You rest in the Lord, in other words. As you rest in the Lord, you have the energy to do your works and your actions. But the faith that you have is what energizes the works. Your rest in the Lord energizes you to do the works. Your faith energizes the works. It all comes together. Next thing you know, you're the Energizer Bunny. No, I'm just kidding. But now you see the importance of faith. It's good to have works. Yes, faith without works is dead. But you have to have faith to energize the works. Because if the works are not energized by faith, your works and your actions are just as dead. And guess what? Your end result is no different from those who have no faith at all in anything. So, with that being said, let me just say one more time as I wrap this up. The prayer for you, simply put, is, Lord, help my unbelief. It's that simple. Help my unbelief. What better person, what better being to help restore your faith than God? A lot of times you hear people say, oh, I've lost my faith in humanity. But that's your problem. It's in humanity. Humanity is not supposed to solve your problem of faith. Humans can give you advice. They can minister to you, preach to you like I am now. But at the end of the day, even I can't help you. God is the one that will restore your faith. Not in humanity, but in Him. And in you. I'm going to pray us out of here. Heavenly Father, I thank you for another time to minister another word. I pray that this message is one that helps your people, and I pray that people have the ears to hear and heart to receive this word. Lord, I'm praying that whoever needs this word, Lord, that they understand the importance of their faith and how their faith will energize their works. You've got people doing so many things, being busybodies, trying to do so much, and they're finding themselves so tired, so wore out. They're not sure what to do. They don't know what to do next, how to move forward. And all you're simply saying to them is, have faith. Your lack of faith, or your limit on faith on what I can or will do, is the only thing holding back. Lord, I thank you. I give you all the praise, the glory, and honor in Jesus' name. Amen.